Hi, everybody. Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel. Going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of June 9th through 15th. We've got a lot going on, as you can see on my hand drawn wheel this time. Monday, we got Mercury today. That's Mercury is going to square the Saturn Neptune conjunction at the same time that Venus is squaring Pluto. Also, Jupiter goes into Cancer that today, and I talked about that in the monthly. And then Tuesday, Mercury will quincunx Pluto. Wednesday, we've got the main event of the week, the full moon in Sagittarius, square the nodal axis, and in a grand fire trine with Mars and Chiron. And then Sunday also, we have Mars squaring Uranus with Mercury on their midpoint. So a lot going on this week. So first off, just a little business. The Astrological Winds channel is a free video blog that I've been doing on YouTube, I think for like 6 years now, weekly. So if you like what you see, I really would like you to become a follower of the blog. And once you do that, please don't forget to turn your notifications on, because if you don't, you don't get notified when the blog is there, and then you may forget. So, and then also remember, it was a podcast for many years before a YouTube channel. So I still have it out there on podcasts. Just go onto your podcast app and just look up Astrological Winds channel. Buzzsprout puts it out, and I think about 20 different ones that pick it up. So, and you don't get the video feed, but it's still the same exact audio feed, which can free you up to do it when, there's a time you might be able to fit in, like, when you're, driving around or something like that, a chance for you to get a listen to it. Also, if you have an Instagram account, Astrological Winds channel does too. If you become a follower there, you'll see it come up in the newsreel, the link. And then you can always find it. Best place to find it besides YouTube is the astrologicalwinds.com, which is my website. And that website also has all my professional services. I know some folks have been asking about that. I try to give some more detail at the end. Also, look in the YouTube description and you'll find my contacts there. But every blog is posted there. I have blogs from months before there if you need to refer back. I also do a weekly calendar page. And like I said, lists all my professional services. I would love to do your chart if you're ready for that. All right, let's get into this week. I'll go into more of that detail. There's a lot going on this week, like I said, and a lot of energy of change going on. Like a lot of those things, like, I told you guys for months, you got to trust the cycles. And, when Mars was retrograde, a lot of crazy stuff went on from December into the spring and stuff. And now, reality is really settling in. It's never as extreme as it seems, right? Things come back, in every direction too, and that's in our personal lives, in the culture, in society, in the political world, all that. So this week, starting on Monday, we've got three really intense squares on Monday. And incidentally, today is the day that Jupiter goes into Cancer, right? I am not going back into that. I did that on the monthly last week. You need to go back into that. That's one of the big shifts of the year. Jupiter going into a sign that it's exalted in and really likes to be there. So that is actually today. That today is the exact day that Jupiter is going into Cancer. But these three big squares are what I really want to talk about. Mercury is squaring the Neptune Saturn conjunction, right? Here's Mercury out here with Jupiter, and also Venus is squaring Pluto today too. So that's a lot of stuff. And the first thing I want to point out once again, and I have pointed it out several times, we've just had three outer planets change signs. That's really big, right? And now Jupiter today. So like even a fourth outer planet now is changing signs. So that means they're all in the early degrees of their signs. They don't move fast. They're outer planets. They stay in that zone. So Pluto and Neptune and Saturn, and now Jupiter is going to join them, although Jupiter definitely moves faster than the others. That means that whenever one of the inner planets changes signs, like Mercury just did yesterday in Cancer, remember from last week's blog, Mercury went into Cancer yesterday on Sunday. That means they're going to aspect any planet that hits a new sign is going to aspect those outer planets that are at the beginning of their sign. So Mercury right away will aspect the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries. And so this is a really interesting one because it basically has us, the three of these together with a square means that we are questioning our own thoughts, our own beliefs, our own judgments that we've made in the last few months, and that perhaps they were based too much on our idealism, is what this is saying. That we maybe allowed ourselves to be misled, we maybe even self deluded ourselves, and now reality is setting in. And it's really challenging those beliefs, those ideals, those thoughts, those opinions that we had. And this can have us feel like really threatened and frustrated and very defensive with our words. This is really like, whoa, like what happened here. So we can get very, very defensive and trying to try to explain ourselves. And it's almost like we've realized we allowed the wool to be pulled over our own eyes, either by others or by the ideas that we believe in. So what this does, especially the Neptune part, it really can confuse us. It really can be very difficult right now to decide where to move forward based on these realizations that these thoughts and opinions and ideas we had may just not be jiving with what's reality. And so it can be very, very difficult to make a decision right now. And one of the things that's a danger with the Mercury Neptune part is to think that, okay, now I'm really on the defensive, I'm feeling really threatened, I'm feeling really cut off, and I may try some underhanded or secretive or deceptive ways of still trying to get what I want. All that's going to do is add to the confusion. All that's going to do is stain your reputation. Seriously. But this is one of the things that people do when their reality starts crashing around them. They start to think, oh, there might be some other way I can get out of this. But what we really need to do is allow Saturn to get in here. And one of the things, too, with Mercury just going into Cancer, we can get very emotional about this because we can feel really threatened with our needs and the needs of our loved ones. So we can even justify why we think we might need to take some, action that might not be so much on the up and up. So what we really need to do is use the Saturn part here and ground those emotions and take a really discerning, self-critical look at the decisions we made, even if that meant following someone else. That was the decision you made, right? It wasn't like someone forced you to follow some opinion or belief or thought that brought you to this place. You made that decision. And so it's now time to be very self critical and try to get constructive about this energy, but it's not a time right now to try to make agreements with others because everybody's confused and you can't be sure that the information you're getting right now is not going to once again just mislead you. So I really think you got to be careful with this. Now, obviously, this can have a depressing effect on the mind, when we see how far apart our ideals and reality is. Then we can see where we made mistakes. We can see where the flaws were in our plan. It can be very difficult and really, feel like depressing, right? But it is a reality check for us. And that's really the best way to ground the idealism that Neptune brings in and take responsibility for the decisions that you've made in relation to that. and and just not allow, like, things like, to mislead you anymore. Now, the problem may come in with the Venus square Pluto too, because this means that we're going to probably see certain people that we feel that, maybe strong armed us or coerced us or propagandized us into a situation where we're now in emotional turmoil with them. And there can be a lot of drama going on. There can be a lot of explosive energy. I mean, Venus square Pluto means that you can get really upset or angry with certain people and really bring it down into like some ruthless, revengeful acts towards them, and really get yourself in a really big battle with others, a power struggle where you're using, ruthless, underhanded energy to try to get back at each other. It's like you're blaming someone else for the issues that you've gotten into. Now, there may be relationships. This may be for you in your life. This whole Mercury, Saturn, Neptune thing of the idealism versus reality might have to do with a relationship where now you see the reality of the relationship. It's hit the ground floor and how raw and open it can be emotionally. And many times, if you're trying to hold on, it breaks into control struggles and power struggles. So the other ways to handle this really is like, oh, this isn't working for me. I need to separate from this energy, from this relationship. Or, okay, this is where we're at emotionally. We are now standing in the light and exposing the shadow of this relationship. And can we build something from there? If you can, then it can be a very profoundly deep connection that you can develop, but it can be very challenging because it's really easy to project blame with these three working together and get really blind about it, and so, one of the other things too with Venus Pluto, this may represent a lot of the issue, maybe too, having to do with things with finances. Is that what created some of the problems in idealism versus reality? Is that what created some of the problems in intimate relationships, that finances are really stressed? Venus square Pluto shows that a lot of money can be lost, and the stock market's been funny. Things have been weird, so like the economy's been odd, so that could be where a lot of the stress is too. One of the best things to do with Venus Pluto square is, like, if you're feeling this intensity, that it is a very creative power and energy, right? So if you can, filter that into art by either exposing yourself to some very intense art that is consciousness expanding and changing, or creating that yourself, like just filtering that energy, that intensity that you may feel towards others or your ideals failing in reality, and put that into art, you can come up with some kind of really profound statement, is a good way to say it. Now, on Tuesday, tomorrow, I just want to mention, since I did say, Mercury going to hit the three outer planets, the other outer planet it's going to hit in early degrees is Pluto, and it's going to do a quincunx to Pluto retrograde on Tuesday. And I really think, once again, this shows how the energy hands off and continues to develop from one transit to another, because what Mercury quincunx Pluto is going to do is going to have us really obsess inside ourselves on Tuesday, probably about a lot of this stuff, about a lot of these challenges, and just really chewing it over inside of ourselves, really thinking about it, really getting into the complicated, complex arrangements of how we got to where we are now, and we may come up with some very new ways of dealing with the situation too. And it could be non-linear too. It could be a different kind of approach than a direct approach, But like, one of the things about Mercury Pluto, because there's so much of that energy inside, and there is a lot of judgment going on, even if you're not expressing it. You can still be projecting a lot of blame, like the Venus Pluto thing. So that gives off an energy in our energy field that we're holding things back still, that certain things may be hidden or secretive. And so that can give off an air of suspicion, and people may not trust one another very well at the beginning of this week, and we really just need to what we really need to do with this energy is really internally process, hash out our thoughts and opinions. It's not going to be an easy thing to do. We have to kind of like be brutally honest with ourselves, is a good way to say it. But like, we can come up with some creative, maybe inventive new ways to do things. Now, another great thing to do with Mercury Pluto, because it is so obsessive, is any kind of research that you have to do, anything that you're looking deeply into answers, any kind of issues that you have. It's really a good time to focus on that, to do some study and research on that. Now, Wednesday is the big day of the week. We've got the full moon in Sagittarius. So it's opposite the sun in Sagittarius at 21 degrees Gemini. And it is square the nodal axis, which I didn't even put in there, but it's also in a grand fire trine with Mars in Leo and the Chiron Eris conjunction in Aries. So, if I was going to put in, and I probably should have put this in for you guys. Let me do this actually. So we get this. So what we've got going on too at the same time as this is it's squaring the nodal axis too. Okay. Just draw that in. So here's our south node over here, and our north node is really close, actually. North node is in Pisces right now, and the south node in Virgo. And so it's making a square, or really what it's called a grand cross, although not technically a grand cross since the nodes are not really bodies. But so we have the full moon, 21 Sag to Gemini, in a square to the nodal axis at about 22, 23 degrees of Virgo and Pisces. And then we also have it in this grand fire trine with Chiron, Eris, and Leo. So a very like complex full moon. And when you think about the full moon in Sag first, and remember, you want to look at your chart where 21 degrees Sag is and 21 degrees Gemini. That'll tell you the two houses and the axis that this full moon will be mostly affecting you, right? So, both these signs are very similar in the way that they both like to explore. This is the Gemini Sag axis, is the axis of learning and of knowledge, right? So they both like to explore. The conflict comes in the way that they do that. For the full moon in Sagittarius, exploring is like the Nike. It's like, just do it, right? It's like, go out there and take action, learn from experience, knowledge burned in from experience, independent. Formulate your own opinions and ideas and philosophies, and give others the freedom to do so also. Travel far and wide to accumulate knowledge. Very tolerant of other people, other cultures, other places. Do not let emotions stop you from doing that. Instead, it's very inspiring emotionally. It's a very positive emotional sign, Sag. It's like, go out there and do it, right? But the sun in Gemini, its approach to getting knowledge is not so much experiential, it's intellectual. It goes and studies, it reads, it talks to others, it collects information that way. It likes a little bit here, a little bit there. So that's what can, that's where the difference is trying to bring these two into balance. There's a conflict between like gaining knowledge experientially and intuitively versus gaining knowledge from just taking little bits here and there. One goes a lot deeper, the other one stays a lot more on the surface. One has a lot more conviction about what it believes in. The other is like, oh, I can take it a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And you can see this is where this full moon is also going to create a lot of conflict between you and others in the world. It's people with the full moon in Sag, everybody believes in their beliefs, in their belief system, in your philosophies, in your religion, in your law, whatever that is. That's where you can come into conflict with other people over beliefs, and we can all get kind of preachy and self-righteous about that with Sag. So that's where we can really fall into that issue. And remember, in the full moon, there's a conflict going on inside of us, first of all, between our emotions on the inside and our will on the outside. And so that gets projected out into our relationships. And we find people out in the world who will take one of those two positions and end up being in a turmoil with them, remember. And then there, it's and a lot of times we're forced into some kind of decision too, because there's some kind of problem and the full moon is fully exposing to us, so and then remember, people are going to act out in individualistic ways. Full moon brings that energy out of like this rebellion, so that kind of feeds that Sagittarius thing, and they'll do it very publicly, we know that, so some very big issues from certain others may come up in relation to ideals and philosophies and things like that, and it can get us very upset emotionally, very angry with others, and we really just need to see, we really I feel like we have to make some decision in relation to them that, mirrors this full moon's energy. Now, the square to the nodal axis makes it even more intense because it really shows that certain situations in our lives have become intolerable, literally to that point of intolerable, kind of like a little bit with the Mercury and Saturn again, and Neptune, that we no longer can stand by and take it. So with the full moon square the nodal axis, we're going to be inspired to take action on the things that have become that uncomfortable for us, that and we are ready to break into new territory. We can see the south node that there are certain things, certain systems, procedures, and rules that in Virgo that have us stuck, and we're resisting change because of that. And so the full moon's putting a full light on that, and we can see it clearly now. And now it's calling us to move towards the north node, towards what is our destiny now, to things that will work better. It will require a leap of faith. It's in Pisces, right? We can't clearly see where our destiny lies, and that's part of what's intriguing about it too, because it is new territory. It's going to magnetize us toward us. It wants to draw us in, and what it may require is separations from some people or some ideas or some groups that are holding us back. We have to leave certain things behind in order to move forward, and that does take a new leap of faith, right? Because we don't know where that's going, but we can tell that change is required under this energy. You can feel the stress. You can feel that things are really difficult right now, especially if we're trying to use old ways. So when you have difficulty in relationships or with groups or opinions, that's what the trigger is. That's the ones that's telling you they're the ones you need to move away from. right? And the ones that intrigue you are the ones you need to move towards. Now, we have a grand trine in fire going on between the moon in Sag, trining Mars and Leo, trining Chiron Eris conjunction in Eris. So this is really good for on the personal level for the full moon because it feeds into the Sagittarius energy, okay? It feeds into being very innovative. It feeds into being ingenious with new ideas that are very inspiring and fire us up and initiate us to take action with the Mars there. So this is really great. I for on a personal level, I think this works really good with the moon in Sagittarius to push us forward and to have us want to break free from things that are hurting us, that are holding us back. You know, that's the Chiron thing, to bring in changes that we're excited about. Eris, to bring in, things that, we can bring in that are constructive changes, that are good things to us, and to be really activated and motivated by this energy, to have a really positive attitude about it, and really be willing to take it on, to move forward, to really come up with some great new creative solutions and new improvements on the things that we're stuck here with or stuck here with. These old things may be driving us back, and the energy and impetus to push us forward to where we want to go. So I really think, the Grand Trine is going to really help on a personal level. But I have to say this too, trines and grand trines in particular are a lot about energy that's built up, right? Built up to a point where it breaks and then it flows. So, like, one of the analogies I'd like to use here is like, think about water. It's building up, building up, building up, and then it hits a spill stone, and then it just starts to flow. That's what a trine is like. So there can be a lot of tension behind what has built it up to that point. And the reason I say this is many times when a trine or grand trine acts out, if the energy of tension is there and it releases, right, the grand trine can let that energy of tension really re-release in a very strong way too. So, like we know with full moons, a lot of times natural disasters go up or man-made disasters go up. And when you think about a grand trine in fire, you just think, well, the natural disasters may be fires, which is exactly what happens. Things build a stress point, the fire blows up, and then boom, the fire is flowing. So, really look out for that kind of energy to like any kind of full moon tension disaster, man-made or natural. It could really conflagrate it, real, because it'll flow like a flood then, right? So, like, I think about fire, and I think with natural disasters, heat, dryness, droughts, forest fires, things like that could be very prevalent in this full moon cycle, right? And so, like, we just have to be very, very aware of that energy. And then with the man-made thing, what does fire represent? It's like stuff that's war, weapons, violence. So once again, we could really see a lot of tense energy maybe break open, and that could actually be more of a flow of that kind of energy. It could flow into the more violence. Now, Jupiter is the ruler of this full moon, okay? And it just went into Cancer, and it's separating from the conjunction with Mercury. So I think this is really good again because it's going to give us a really big vision for the future. And it's about wanting to take care of ourselves, wanting to take care of loved ones, wanting to even take care of society and our nation, because Jupiter is a social planet and Cancer is a nationalistic sign. So I think this is really going to help us come up with new ideas on how we can take care of ourselves, how we can take care of our loved ones, how we can help take care of society, and and help lift everybody up on some level or another. I really like that energy and the fact that Jupiter is the ruler of this. And once again, with the Grand Trine, I see a lot of good stuff where we're really willing to break into new territory, and find new ways to take care of ourselves, find new ways to get resources that are dependable for ourselves and our loved ones, and literally like carrying the warmth of a hearth inside ourselves is Jupiter in Cancer, and spreading that energy around. And like I said, we can even consider the whole country our family when this gets really good. So I think it'll be good for the United States to go through a lot of this stuff and separate the ideals from reality, and then maybe try to start figuring out ways of dealing with the energy that's going on right now to bring in a better future for society and all together. And then also note on Wednesday, Mercury is sextile Venus that day too, which is really the widest Ptolemaic aspect they can have from one another from Earth's geodetic standpoint. And this is really good too. This is like being able to express how we're feeling towards others without putting them on the defensive. In fact, if anything, it gives a very convivial atmosphere that can get very creative with ideas, and like the sum of the individual brains becomes greater than the parts. You can see patterns really well together, and people can, work things out, make plans together. It also gives us the ability to be very creative with our speech and words. So, like, artistic words, public speaking, just really, being able to express ourselves. And it creates a lot of opportunity too, because we're creating a good vibe socially and with others, and we want to help each other out. So it's really great for socializing in general. And, I think once again will help bring down some of the intense parts of the full moon, so that we can, like, start to think about answers and include others in those answers too. And then Sunday, I know I'm probably running hard here. Sunday, we got another intense day with Mars squaring Uranus, and Mercury is semi-square both of them actually. So here's Uranus here, 29 Taurus, and Mars at 28 Leo, and here's where Mercury is, right in between the two of them. So it's semi-square both of them. So it's on the midpoint of both of those planets. And so Mars and Uranus is very explosive energy in a square. We have to be very, very careful of any actions we take. If we get impulsive, which is very possible, it's going to mess us up, you know? This is very compressed energy, and we can make a big leap forward with it, but that can also be an explosive leap if it's not disciplined and thought out. We can be very contradictory and out of balance with others. We can be very rebellious with one another. There's an emotional intensity. We're ready to do battle, even if that can come to violence. So we're ready to act out independently, and it can get our nervous system really worked up too. We can literally almost feel the energy of the anger and frustration like emanating through our systems with this, and it can overload our nerves. It can be very, very difficult to control our actions. Our strength and our power could actually get us into trouble. So Mercury can be a little bit useful here, because we can use the mind. One of the greatest things of the intellect is disciplining our fears and emotions. That's actually the greatest tool of the intellect, in all honesty, in my opinion, is it helps us have the mental discipline to overcome impulsive emotions that normally would have us act out and really mess ourselves and others up, and the energy around us. So we can use Mercury, to try to discipline this energy. It really, really try to, like, say, hey, stop, I don't need to go to this level, and try to like calculate our actions instead. Try to like have some kind of plan before we move forward on some urge. Have some detailed plan, make sure that you're not going to hurt yourself because, once again, if you do, this shows it can really stress out your nervous system. This is a very, very restless energy. It's very easy to get irritated and angry. It's very difficult to control, but it's telling us there's no doubt this is a time to change and that to welcome creative change in. And those who welcome that in, as long as you do it carefully, it can bring us big leaps forward very quickly, But we have to be very careful. If we get emotional and impulsive, we can end up hurting ourselves physically, and really like, damaging once again relationships and the energy around us. This energy makes us very rebellious against authorities too. Anybody that we perceive who's blocking us, it can be older relationships a lot of times too. But just having a positive energy about change and looking at this as an opportunity to change and allowing Mercury to figure it out and not get so reactionary will be what can bring the most success and positive energy. Now, what's interesting to note too, one of the monthly aspects that I talked about once again in detail last week, so I'm not going to go over it again, that is also exact on Sunday is the Jupiter square Saturn. And the reason that's really interesting is it's on a personal level. It kind of ties into all this. It shows you how astrology works in cycles that can go for years. 5 years ago, right? At the end of 2020, you guys may remember it's still the great conjunction when Jupiter and Saturn were conjunct around the solstice around late December 2020, right before the COVID and all that stuff hit in. And everybody was like, new things are happening, great new things in their lives and everything. Well, this is the first quarter square. And it's very much like some of this under energy in the sense that it is showing us where those plans have fallen short. And it's a time of a lot of tense energy. It's a time where you may realize the plans aren't going to work out and you got to make a serious right turn on them, right? So this is like, it's kind of become obvious, but it's like one of those things that once again, it's telling us we need to discern what's working and what's not for us. And really the best person to make that choice is ourselves. Other people have their own agenda with us, and they may not be able to give us a clear, objective way of helping us make a decision. But we once again, this is showing us how our values, Jupiter, are not fitting into reality. And and that we need to make some decision that could be difficult to move away from the things that are being blocked. There's a restlessness once again in this energy that's going to play into the Mars Uranus, and it can get us very explosive. But there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's a challenge by the squares to take some kind of action. 5 big squares this week, really pushing us to take action, And a lot of times, once again, with Jupiter, Saturn, it has to do with our work, it has to do with our career. If we're feeling like we're just heading up against the same dead end over and over, it's probably the time to make some serious changes, either within that career or going on out beyond it. So basically, overall, all this energy this week, Mercury, Venus, and the squares, the full moon, the grand trine, the squares to the nodal axis, the Mars, Uranus square, Jupiter, they're all saying we're changing. It's going on all around us. And if you think you're going to hold on to those structures, that's what's going to hurt you the most. But if you get too impulsive and reactionary, that can also hurt you. We've got a lot of good examples in the world of leaders who have done that for us in the last few months, right? Getting too impulsive and hurting themselves, right? And then creating all kinds of suspicion about what their true motives are. So this is a time we've reached a critical point. It's not working anymore. So whatever that is in your life, you start bringing in these changes with a lot of valuable energy here to do that. Grand trine, Sagittarius moon, all kinds of good energy here to do that, to make these changes, to start putting them in, because otherwise your life is just going to become more and more intolerable. And the best way forward is accepting change, even if we can't see what our new destiny is. Things will rally once we make that decision and help us along the way. All right, that's what I got for this week. I probably went long again. Next week, let me take a quick look here. Mars goes into Virgo next week, so that's a big switch. And then we do have that Jupiter square Neptune too, which I actually talked about in the monthly. And then, of course, the Sun is going to go into Cancer because we have the solstice coming up, right? So some big energy again next week. That's a big shift, Mars into Virgo. And so I'll be talking about that a lot next week. All right, you guys, thank you so much. Remember, this is a free service, so I really would like you to pass on the link to someone now, even if you've done it before. If you need any professional astrological services, please check my website. I've been doing charts for over 20 years, hundreds, thousands, whatever, of many happy clients. I would love to do your chart, or someone that you know that needs that work. It's much more holistic, well rounded than a computer printout or looking up information in a book or having a friend that knows a little bit about astrology. Look, it's an investment in yourself, really. Just we spend so much money on so many things, and your chart never leaves you. Give yourself a gift. Like I tell people, if it's your birthday, give yourself that gift. You would go out and buy a new pair of jeans for your birthday, and 2 years later they're in tatters, right? But like, your chart's always going to be with you, and you're important. You're a valuable part of this world and the changes that are going on. So become self empowered, know yourself. Check out my website for all those services I have. I can work with you financially with payments if you need to do that. If you have a group that's interested in an astrology event, same thing. Of all kinds of things. I can do lectures, workshops, classes, mini readings. If you're a student, I'm looking for a couple more beginner students to start a live beginners class with. I also have beginner student material available on podcasts if you'd like that. All right, please pass it on. If you'd like to make a donation to the blog, Venmo is at Matthew-Lawton, Lauten, Cash App, $ Matthew Lawton. Thank you so much for some of you who continue to, give me a little donation here and there. No amount is too small. Everything is appreciated. Thank you for the comments too. Thank you for all the positive response, and please pass the blog along now. Well, I'll see y'all next week.